Good morning, everybody. Today, I'll speaking about the achievements of National Assembly or the work of the National Assembly and its criticism. On May 5th, 1789, Louis XVI, who belonged to the Bourbon dynasty of France, called the State General or the feudal parliament of France, which resulted in the formation of National Assembly. On June 17, 1789, the Third Order of France proclaimed itself a national assembly and invited the nobles and clergy to join it in the work of the national reformation. The formation of a national assembly was really a great achievement of the revolutionaries or the common people of France. It is a great victory in the history of the French Revolution. The nobles and the clergy isolated themselves from its formation. The National Assembly of France carried out a large number of reforms, and it brought about certain historical and revolutionary laws in between 1789 to 1791. In the first one, the abolition of old privileges. The first great achievements of the National Assembly of France was the destruction of feudalism, serfdom, and class privileges of the nobles and clergy of France. It was a first important work or achievements of the National Assembly of France. According to H.L. Fisher, such revolutionary social changes are very rare in the history of France. As a result of the abolition of feudalism, serfdom, and class privileges of the nobles and clergy, the peasants and tenants became free from the clutches of the nobles and clergy and the government or feudal lords, and they became the owners of the new property, because the large estates of the nobles were broken up, and the tenants and peasants who became the owners of the new property, new land, they worked. As a result of the abolition of feudalism and serfdom, the nobles and the clergy were deprived of their special rights and privileges. The nobles and the clergy voluntarily surrendered their old privileges and special rights. In between 1789 to 1791, the National Assembly reorganized the game laws. The game laws was reorganized by the members of the National Assembly. The National Assembly abolished the old system of taxation of France and introduced a new system of taxation. The equality of taxation was a notable achievement of the National Assembly. In this way, National Assembly proclaimed that every person is equal in the eye of law. It taught that every person is equal in the eye of law. In this way, the National Assembly swept away the old system of privileges and social inequalities and built up a new social order on the basis of the principle of equality. In this way, the National Assembly proclaimed social equality. According to Annie Besant, inequalities which were imposed upon for French people for many centuries were vanished within a night. This is the first important achievement of the National Assembly. The second important achievement of National Assembly is that the Declaration of Rights of Man. The Declaration of Rights of Man was the outstanding second achievement of the National Assembly of France. The Declaration of Rights of Man have its own importance or significance. The National Assembly adopted the Declaration of Rights of Man on August 1st, 1789. Lafayette proposed them after the example of American colonists. The Declaration of Rights of Man of France was based on the American Declaration of Independence. According to Kettleby, the Declaration of Rights of Man were inspired by the American Declaration of Philadelphia. The Declaration of Rights of Man was based on the three principles of Rousseau, namely liberty, equality, and fraternity. So the Declaration of Rights of Man was based on the three philosophical ideas of Rousseau. And it was based on the motto of constitutions of United States of America and United Kingdom. The Declaration of Rights of Man comprised 17 terms. Out of 17 terms, 7 terms are very, very significant and important. In that first one, the first important term of the Declaration of Rights of Man is that all persons are born free, remain free, and equal in rights. The second important term of the Declaration of Rights of Man is that liberty, equality, protection of property, and security are the birthrights of every person. This is the second important term of the Declaration of Rights of Man. Third one, the sovereignty of the state or nation belong to people. In the social contract, Rousseau preached that the people are the real sovereign, not of the king. The king was only elected by the people. So according to Rousseau, people are the real sovereign. The sovereignty rests with the people. This is the third important characteristic or feature or term of the Declaration of Rights of Man. Fourth one is that all persons have the right to express their views and express their freedom of press. This is also another important term of the Declaration of Rights of Man. And fifth one, no one shall be accused, arrested, imprisoned without valid reason. This is also fifth important term or characteristic of Declaration of Rights of Man. And sixth one, all the persons, all the people have the right to control or right to direction the economy of the nation or state. This is also another important term of the Declaration of Rights of Man. The last important term of the Declaration of Rights of Man is that all the officers of the nation or state are responsible to the people. On 1st August 1789, the National Assembly was adopted the Declaration of Rights of Man. But the National Assembly of Common People, or Third Estate of France, proclaimed the Declaration of Rights of Man not only for the welfare of the people of France. They proclaimed for the welfare of the entire human race of the world. According to Lord Acton, the Declaration of Rights of Man was very strong than the guns, army, aims, and purpose of Napoleon Bonaparte. In the words of Grant and Temperley, the Declaration of Rights of Man is the most characteristic examples of the nobler side of the Revolution of 1789. In the words of Gerso, the Declaration of Rights of Man was the death certificate of old regime, but it contained the promise of new life for France. So this is the Declaration of the Rights of Man by National Assembly. The third important achievements of the National Assembly is that the establishment of new and uniform administrative system in France. This is the third important work or achievements of the National Assembly of France. By the members of National Assembly, the old provinces of France were completely abolished. The National Assembly stabilized old administrative system of France. Local administration and judicial administration was reorganized by the National Assembly. Totally, the administrative department of the nation was completely reorganized. The provincial council were established for their administration. The local council were established in the communes. The number of the members of the provincial councils and local council were to be elected. For the purpose of administration of France, the country was divided into 83 departments. Each department was divided into district. Each district was further divided into canton. Each canton was further divided into communes. The National Assembly of France made revolutionary changes in the field of judiciary. The judicial department of the nation or state was completely reorganized by the members of the National Assembly of France. The system of election of judges were to be elected. So it introduced the system of election of judges. All the judges were to be elected. In addition to that, the National Assembly punished inhuman punishments. This is also another important revolutionary changes by the members of the National Assembly. Jury system was put into force for criminal cases. The central courts were established. The local courts were also established by the members of the National Assembly. A provincial court was established in every province of the nation. A Supreme Court was established in Paris, the capital city of France. This is the third important achievements of the National Assembly. The fourth important achievements of the National Assembly of France is that financial reforms. In the year 1774, the financial condition and economic condition of France was very critical. In the year 1789, the financial condition of France was also very, very lamentable, critical, and severe. The treasury was empty. There was a deep critical financial crisis in France. The national finance of France were in great confusion. It was impossible to collect direct tax at once. In this way, the National Assembly of France took drastic steps to tackle the financial and economic problems of France. As a result, the National Assembly carried out a large number of reforms in the field of economy. For example, in the year 1789, the National Assembly confiscated the property of the Roman Catholic Church. It was declared as a national property. The Roman Catholic Church lost its land. It was nationalized. The National Assembly issued a paper currency. It came to be known as assignat. But the National Assembly to solve little bit of a financial problem from France. But in future, France had to face several problems. This is the financial reforms of National Assembly. Next, another important achievements of the National Assembly is that the distribution of land. In the year 1789, National Assembly confiscated the lands of Roman Catholic Church, and it was converted into national property and divided it equally among peasants and poor people and tenants. As a result, the peasants and tenants became the owners of the new property. This is the outstanding achievements of the National Assembly. The sixth important achievements of the National Assembly of France is that reorganization of the Roman Catholic Church. In between 1789 to 1791, the National Assembly of France had undertaken to reorganize the whole government of Roman Catholic Church, because the Roman Catholic Church was like a state within a state, and it was very powerful, and it was a very popularity on the of the revolution. As a result, the revolutionaries of France had a strong anti-church feelings. Hence, they took drastic action against the Roman Catholic Church. In the year 1789, the National Assembly confiscated the property of the Roman Catholic Church. On July 12, 1790, the National Assembly established a civil constitution of clergy. So, according to civil constitution of clergy, the clergy and bishops or monasteries were made the salaried class of the state. The clergy were paid by the state or government or National Assembly. So, by the civil constitution of clergy, the monasteries were made the servant of the they were made the servant of the state. In addition to that, the number of monasteries was reduced to 83 from 133. But the Pope of Rome opposed all these radical reforms of Napoleon's Roman National Assembly. The Pope of Rome completely did not accept the radical reforms of National Assembly. He criticized the work of the National Assembly of France. As a result, many clergy, bishops, priests, monasteries resigned from their post and migrated to foreign countries. So, this the civil constitution of clergy was a great drawback according to Pope of Rome. It led to division in the Roman Catholic Church of France. Religious toleration was proclaimed by the members of the National Assembly. In this way, National Assembly of France had undertaken to reorganize the whole government of the Roman Catholic Church. As a result, the Roman Catholic Church became the part of the nation. Another important achievements of the National Assembly is that the establishment of a new constitution of 1791. On September 1791, the National Assembly of France established a new constitution for France. It was the first written constitution of France. The new constitution of France was based on the separation of powers of Montesquieu, who was a famous intellectual of France of 18th century. By the Constitution of 1791, limited monarchy or limited constitutional monarchy was established in France. The king was made the head of the executive. His ministers were not to sit in the legislative assembly of France. But the king was given suspensive vote. In this way, National Assembly controlled the autocratic power of King of France. In addition to that, the number of members of the House was fixed at 745. They were elected for the term of 2 years. This is the new Constitution of France of 1791. The last important achievements of the National Assembly is that the National Assembly of France provided an opportunity for the common people of France to enjoy liberty, equality, and fraternity. These are the achievements or works or function of the National Assembly of France. Okay, next, let us discuss about the estimates of the National Assembly of France. In the first one, the National Assembly destroyed the old pillars of the ancient regime. Second one, the National Assembly abolished or destroyed old feudalism. Then the third one, the National Assembly abolished old financial system. National Assembly abolished old judicial system. The last one, the National Assembly made revolutionary changes in the Roman Catholic Church of the country. This is the estimate of National Assembly of France. Next, now let us discuss about criticism of the work of the National Assembly or criticism of the achievements of the National Assembly. National Assembly carried out a large number of reforms and laws in between 1791 to 1789 to 1791. But the work and achievements of National Assembly were sharply criticized by historians and scholars and critics. Many historians, critics have sharply criticized the work of the National Assembly. In that first one, the National Assembly opened the way to mob rule. This is the first important demerits of the National Assembly of France. Second one, it put forward dangerous theories. And third one, it was a great mistake to separate the legislature from the executive, because the main demerits, the chief demerits of new constitution of France of 1791 was weak executive and limited franchise based upon property qualification. So it was against the Declaration of Human Rights. Another important demerits of the National Assembly of France is that the National Assembly controlled the despotic or aristocratic power of a king. This is another important king as by the Constitution of by the new Constitution of 1791. The king lost its despotic power and prestige. Next, another important demerits of the National Assembly is that voting conditions for voting were very strict. So it was dead against the Declaration of Rights of Man. Another important demerits of the work of the National Assembly of 1789 is that the National Assembly completely failed to solve the financial problem of France. Another important demerits of the National Assembly of France is that the system of election of judges also did not prove satisfactory. The last important demerits of the National Assembly is that the new constitution, the civil constitution of clergy was a drawback of the new constitution, and it led division in the Roman Catholic Church of France. So this is the criticism of the National Assembly. Thank you.